Good evening, good evening, good evening. So glad to have all of you here with us on this evening. I am the Reverend Dr. Andre Johnson. I'm Senior Pastor of Gifts of Life Ministries, the Urban Oasis. I'm Executive Director of the G Life Social Justice and Public Advocacy Institute. And I am so glad that we are all here. I want to shout out all of the people that are joining us right here on this webinar and all of the people who are watching on our many different social media outlets that we are using right now. And again, thanking the Black Public Defenders Association for partnering up with us to talk about public safety, in a way that many of us have not talked about public safety. So again, welcome to our second town hall. As I promised, the first time when we talked about we asked the question, what is public safety? And let's talk about public safety on our first town hall. This town hall is the second one. It's a follow-up. And then we are going to have another town hall as well. And we may be able to tell you just a little bit about that before we get out of here on today. This is the triangle of justice, the courtroom and public safety. And as a follow-up, as I mentioned earlier, to our first town hall event, we invite you to join us as we go inside the courtroom. You ever think about public safety and the courts? Well, come with us. We're going inside the courtroom to address public safety. And we're going inside the courtroom with a judge, a former ADA, and a former public defender. We invite you to submit your questions and your comments, especially if you're on the webinar. Again, thank you for joining us and registering and being a part of this. We invite you to make your comments and ask questions via the Q&A piece that's right there at the bottom of your screen. And then if you're on social media, please share with us your questions and your comments, because we want to focus on how the courts could better address public safety concerns. So, but without any further ado, we have to bring in our partners that are working with us with this initiative of public safety. I want to bring in Elena Bloodworth. There she is. Oh, so glad to have you here with us. She was with us on the last time, and we are just so excited about this partnership. And I'm so excited. I want to talk a little bit about, and maybe we'll do this. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about some of our findings, because we have been interviewing people as well and asking them, what do they think about public safety? So I kind of want to drop some of that as well too, but I'm gonna shut up now. Elena, thank you for joining us tonight.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. As you stated, my name is Elena Bloodworth. I am the Deputy Director of the Black Public Defender Association. We call the Black Public Defender Association BPDA. One of our missions is that we aim to improve the quality of defense provided to low-income communities across the United States by creating and maintaining a national network of skilled Black public defenders that identify with and are committed to the populations they serve. I can tell you, I am personally a former PD from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I am so excited about this conversation because this conversation is about bringing the community in the courtroom. I personally believe and know that the power rests within the community. So I'm super excited. I also see a former PD on this panel, so I might be a little impartial. However, I am so excited about this conversation. We are so happy and grateful to partner with you, with G Life Ministries, for this campaign of reimagining public safety. We know it's important to strengthen the community's understanding of public safety and elevate the voice of the Black community. This campaign, we focus on amplifying the voices of the directly impacted community. I know so many times that perspective is not as out there as we hope. So I'm really excited, again, about this partnership. The first conversation was amazing. I cannot wait to listen to the second conversation. Unless there's anything else you all need from me, I am going to honestly get out of you all's way. I am going to be watching from the live stream. And I can't wait to hear you all have this conversation.
Well, Elena, thank you again so much for being here on tonight, supporting us, all of the folk over at BPDA, wonderful folk to work with. I am so excited about our future collaborations that we are going to have together. So if you didn't know, we are doing this Reimagining Public Safety, G-Life Outreach, Gifts of Life Ministries, and the Black Public Defenders Association. So we are engaging the community. So if you are interested in sharing what you think we should do as it relates to public safety, please send us an email at reimaginingps@gmail.com. Before I introduce our moderator this evening, we will be remiss if we did not take just a moment to remember the folk in Texas that are going through just unimaginable suffering and grief right now with the shooting that happened at the school. Just happened roughly a couple of hours ago, right before we began this program. And then just a week ago, Buffalo. And so talking about public safety, that's when I began to start hearing from a lot of people about, do I really feel safe in my own community? Do we feel safe in our schools? Do we feel safe? And if not, what can we do about this? So we lift them up in prayer, and we are standing with and praying with those who are mourning right now and who still mourn right now. Well, our moderator, of course, is not a stranger to what we have been doing here. She was part of our panel on last time. Attorney Kimkea Harris has served as an attorney with the Illinois Fraternal Order of Police Labor Council since June of 2011. Prior to joining the Labor Council, she was the coordinator of labor relations for Memphis City Schools, assistant city attorney for the city of Memphis, and assistant district attorney for Shelby County. Kimkea has a BA in political science from Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee, where she graduated summa cum laude and Phi Beta Kappa, and a law degree from Washington and Lee University School of Law in Lexington, Virginia. Kimkea is licensed in both Tennessee and Illinois. Kimkea is an active member of Alpha Kappa Sorority Incorporated. She joined the sorority back in '92 at the Phi Pi chapter located at Fisk University. Kimkea is active in social justice issues and serves as a co-chair of the Justice Task Force Committee, which is part of the BNF Jones chapter of the National Bar Association. In this role, Kimkea leads her advocacy efforts on behalf of former Tennessee death row inmate Purvis Payne, who was recently removed from death row after 30 plus years. And she is helping to lead Shelby County, Tennessee in the communication efforts about the role of a prosecutor. Without any further ado, our moderator this evening, attorney Kimkea Harris and her dog Justice.
All this time she's not said anything. And now here we start, and immediately, but you know what that is? Her name is Justice, and Justice is making it her noise.
That's right.
Her voice heard. So thank you, Dr. Johnson, for the opportunity to participate in this panel, along with the BP, the Black Public Defenders Association. We are so excited to have this opportunity to raise awareness about what public safety looks like in the triangular of justice. Everyone knows there's three corners of a courtroom. It's pretty common. Everyone recognizes the players, but not everyone understands the roles of those players in the courtroom. What happens? What's the interplay? And how do we, what do we see when we're looking at TV dramas and celebrity feuds on TV? These are the players, and we want to talk about their roles and how does it impact you when and if someone or yourself lands in a criminal courtroom. So let's discuss this triangular of justice, this courtroom and public safety. Our first panelist is attorney Muriel Malone Nolen. Now, I have an abbreviated introduction of everyone. I'm sorry that mine was so long. I didn't mean for it to be that way. And attorney Malone Nolen, I'm going to ask her to turn on her camera. Attorney Malone Nolen is the interim executive director for the Tennessee Human Rights Commission and a former assistant district attorney in Shelby County for 18 years. So thank you for joining us today, Muriel. The next panelist is attorney Donna Armstard. Donna, do you mind turning on your camera? There she is. So we have attorney Donna, who is a retired former public defender with the Shelby County Public Defender's Office for over 30 years. So we look forward to talking to Donna and hearing her perspective. Thank you, Donna. Next, we have the Honorable Judge Carolyn Blackett. Yes, Judge Blackett is a current judge in Shelby County Criminal Court Division 4, where she's the senior judge, I think been on the bench since what, 1994? 96, 94. So she's the most senior judge and the first African-American Black woman to sit on a state court judgeship in the state of Tennessee. So thank you, Judge Blackett, and we look forward to hearing from you as well. Now I want to start off with the first contact of what we believe the first contact you will have with the criminal justice system, and that would be the prosecutor. So we're going to talk to Attorney Malone, or Attorney Muriel. We're just going to call her Muriel for the sake of this, if you don't mind, Muriel. And
That's fine.
Okay, thank you. And so I'm just going to have Muriel just explain a little bit about the role of the district attorney.
Well, thank you for having me, Attorney Harris and Dr. Johnson. It's great to be here. I was a former prosecutor in Memphis for about 18 years. And the role of the prosecutor in Shelby County is to be the chief law enforcement officer in that city, in that county. Simply put, that means that the police departments investigate the crimes and the prosecutor brings charges or files charges in court to represent the citizens of the state and the victims. That is why you will see anytime anyone is arrested on a criminal indictment or police report, you'll often see State of Tennessee versus Jane Doe. Prosecutors represent the laws in Tennessee that define what is and is not a criminal offense. The prosecutors should, at least when I was a prosecutor, three of the main things that I carried with me day in and day out, whenever I made a decision, spoke with the victim, presented a case before a judge, or went to trial, I had to remember that not only was I representing a party in a particular case, but I also had to be mindful of what justice means. That's different than representing a party. I'm representing citizens, but I also have to be mindful that justice may look a little different depending on how far you get in that particular case. So we have to remember that whenever we're representing citizens. Public safety, of course, should be a concern of prosecutors as well as police, government officials. And it's, we're here today to talk about what makes you feel safe. Why don't you feel safe? And I think it's, something to be said about systems that are in place to protect us, that oftentimes make us feel more vulnerable, more harm when we encounter them, whether it's, the police respond or we appear in court as a defendant or as a victim. It's just something to be said that we're even having to have this conversation. And I don't have, all of the answers, and maybe not any of the answers, but I know that we prosecutors should be at the forefront of change in the criminal justice system. And we can't do that as Black and brown people if we're not represented in all three corners. We have to be represented in the prosecutor's office, on the bench, as well as in the defense bar. I know that a lot of times, at least when I was in law school, a lot of my colleagues felt that they could benefit their community and their people by defending. And, I do think that's true to a certain extent, but I also think that a lot of change is going to come within, and we can't do that if we're not represented in these prosecutors' office.
Thank you so much, Muriel. That was an awesome presentation. And at some point, we're going to have questions and we're going to ask you a lot about that role. But thank you so much for that introduction. The next step would be the defense attorney, or in this case, we have a former public defender, and that is attorney Donna Armstard. So I'm going to ask attorney Donna to give us just a little introduction about the role of a defense attorney / public defender.
Okay. As Ms. Harris said, I've been a public defender, or was a public defender, for about 30 years. Probably my difference is that I've worked in various areas within the public defender's office. I started off as a general sessions attorney. I was a criminal court supervisor. I was later, prior to my retiring, I was a deputy administrator. As such, I've seen from the very beginning the different things about the system. And so when a person says that they feel unsafe, I understand that. First contact of a public defender or a private attorney should come once the person has been arrested and the police decide that they're going to start questioning that person. The police will tell you you have a right to have an attorney, but the problem is that most people feel that they cannot afford an attorney, and they don't know that at that point, when the police tell you that you have a right to have an attorney present before you give a statement, they don't know that the police department can easily call the public defender's office up and say, hey, we need an attorney to come down so we can take a statement from this particular client. And as a result, because a lot of people don't know what their rights are, a lot of times they'll just go ahead and waive it and start giving a statement. And I would say that anytime a person is arrested and they're requested to give a statement, you need to talk to an attorney first, whether it be a public defender or if it's a private attorney. And as I said, keep in mind, if you ever find yourself in this situation, tell the police you want an attorney, and you have to specifically ask for an attorney. You can't ask for your mom, you can't ask for your dad or the next door neighbor. You have to specifically ask for an attorney. Once you ask for that attorney, the police should cease all questioning. And it's very important. You have to say, I want an attorney, and you have to stop talking. If you continue to talk, we can challenge that later on down the road because it's on the police's side at that time that they have to cease questioning you. So that's why I said that will be the first time that you should come in contact with a private attorney or either a public defender. Now, with the public defender's office, we're usually appointed by the judge inside the courtroom. However, in certain cases, we do have special permission to come down and talk to a client who's just been arrested. As I said, I've worked different positions. In my last 5 years, I was in juvenile court, and we had a lot of juveniles to come through, and their moms would call us and say, hey, the police is taking my child to the police station. What can I do? And we'll tell them, we're on our way. We'll meet you at the police station. And surprisingly, I've had more calls to the police station working in juvenile court than I did as an adult. And a lot of times my clients, once we're appointed upstairs, will say, well, Ms. Armstard, I did not know that you could come to the police station and represent me. Nobody told me that. I said, well, if you really listen, when the police explain your rights to you, they say you have a right to have this attorney, and one will be given to you if you cannot afford one. So be it in that police station or be it in the courtroom, you will have an attorney. As a public defender, I don't know why we've got such a reputation of being not good attorneys, or either we're working for the state or we get paid for so many guilty pleas. What I don't understand is why, if somebody is representing you, that you're talking bad about them, you're disrespecting them, and you're saying that they're not real attorneys. But what you need to understand, public defenders, all they do is criminal law. They are criminal law experts. Like with anything else, you'll have some really great ones, and then you might have some that you might not have good experience with, but they are still experts in the law. And an advantage of having a public defender is if they don't know, they've got a whole office that they can actually get in contact with and say, hey, this is what this issue is right now. What step do I need to take first? When you get into the courtroom on your arraignment day, the judge will ask you at that time, after he's explained to you what you're being charged with, whether or not you can afford an attorney. As a general rule, if you're in general sessions and you say that you can't afford an attorney and you are in custody, a public defender will be appointed that day and he will talk to you in the courtroom. That's if you are in general sessions and if you are charged with a misdemeanor. If you are charged with a felony and you are in custody in general sessions, because it is a felony charge, the judge will reset your case and then he will appoint the public defender's office and someone will come and talk to you in the jail about your case. It's a little different when you get upstairs to criminal court. When you get to criminal court, the judge will then ask you also whether or not you can afford an attorney. Sometimes the judges will just go ahead and reset the case, maybe a week or so, to see if you can hire an attorney. If not, then they will appoint you someone. You have other judges that if they look at the charge and the nature of the charge, and it's a possibility it could be something that can be settled that day. If you've been in custody for a long period of time, the judge will then hold that person and you will talk to a public defender. Now, when we start talking again, bringing about the public safety, you do have certain divisions in criminal court where if you're out of custody and you say you can't afford an attorney, that particular judge will actually put you in custody and then appoint a public defender. And we've been fighting that for the longest, but as far as I understand, that's still happening. And that is not in all divisions. If you are out of custody and you can't afford an attorney, you can go ahead and hire an attorney. What you also need to understand is that a lot of people get confused if they're downstairs in general sessions court and the case goes upstairs and they've hired a private attorney in general sessions court. Once that case gets upstairs, it starts all over again. So in other words, if you hire an attorney.
Donna, you went mute, so we're not catching the last thing you're saying.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can now.
If you go upstairs, you're going to have to hire a new attorney, or if you cannot afford to hire a new attorney, you can ask the judge to appoint you a new attorney. In some situations, if you had a private attorney downstairs and you've got a really good person that you've been working with, you can contact that person. That person can ask the judge if they can be appointed to handle your case, especially if it's a serious charge. And that way you'll have the continuity of representation. The public defender's office, the way it works now, they've got what they call the vertical defense unit. And basically, if they are hired, or excuse me, if our office appointed downstairs and the case goes upstairs, that attorney is going to follow that particular case upstairs and represent you upstairs. If you have an issue with that particular attorney and you want to hire a private attorney, you can also do that as well. I'm going to go ahead and end it right now because I could probably go on and give the judge an opportunity, because I know I'm probably answering something that the judge would like to expound upon.
Well, thank you so much, Donna. I see some questions popping up just in response to things you're saying. So we'll definitely get to that. But
Okay.
we would like to get to Judge Blackett. So Judge Blackett, can you just give us a little description of the role of the judge in a criminal court setting?
All right, first of all, I've been practicing as a criminal court judge for almost 29 years now, going on 30. And I will tell you that when I first came on the bench, the entire criminal court system was seen and is still often seen right now as a penal facility. And I think that as we go forward, when we talk about public safety, that we need to start talking about a courtroom full of people that are trying to make the community safe, not one that is overhauling all kinds of individuals for all kinds of crimes, whether they are murders or they're little incidents of criminal trespass to jail. And over the 29 years that I've been sitting on the bench, I think that the courts are beginning to evolve. I'm not saying, and I wouldn't dare say that they are where they're supposed to be. But one of the reasons that we're having these conversations is because it's time to stop looking at the criminal justice system as a place for putting people in jail. In many ways, it's a place to help people and find out why they're committing the crimes that they're committing. One of the things that people mistake judges about, when you walk in and you see me in this black robe, you believe immediately that I have control, complete control over your destiny. And what you've already found out tonight is that way before you even get to the judge, you are going to meet the prosecutor who's going to go over the charges or going to decide what charges you are going to be charged with. You're going to be appointed or you're going to come in contact with a public defender. So that's all before you even get to me. A lot of times the judge, the biggest thing that I do is I make sure that everyone is treated fairly in terms of making sure they are represented, making sure that the person who has been charged with a crime understands what they have been charged with, what the possibilities are in terms of their punishment, in terms of what happens if they get convicted. In a lot of ways, I'm seen more so as a mediator than as a person who is an advocate for you as a person who's in the courtroom. So therefore, there are a lot of things that I do, but the most important things that I do, as far as I'm concerned, is being very passionate about the law, being fair, being understanding that there's always reasons for things that have been done. And everybody can tell me and anyone else that they've had a bad experience in court, somebody wasn't treated fairly. And one of the biggest things that I'm trying to do at this point is to make that experience not be horrible. I am not saying that there are not people out there that have done wrong, that deserve to be placed in custody, but there are a lot of things and a lot of solutions that we are finding that work just as well or even better. There are opportunities for people who have committed certain types of crimes to have those crimes taken off their record and have their record expunged, which means that if somebody looks up your record, they would never find out that you'd ever been arrested. There are alternatives in terms of instead of going to jail, you can go and be placed on probation. And I am one of those judges that believes that there are exceptions to every rule. Every case is different. And so my role really is not the person in the black robe that comes in and with the big key and locks everybody up, but I am the person that listens to my prosecutors, that listens to the public defenders and the criminal defense bar, and we all try to work together to make sure that our community is safe. That's the goal. The goal is not to lock up. And I really hate the fact that we talk about penal facility, because it means exactly what it says. What we should start concentrating on is the fact that we want to have a safer community, and all of us working together can find a way of doing that. We should not have to sit here and reflect on the fact that 14 children were killed today. We should not have to sit here and reflect on the fact that a number of people, as a result of their race, were killed this past weekend. There is a question of public safety that all of us should be able to go wherever we want and not worry about and not be concerned about people who are out of control, have mental illnesses, drug addictions, and access to guns. And the only way we can do this is to make our society, our community, a safe haven rather than the Wild Wild West.
Thank you, Judge Blackett. That was an amazing summary. Actually, all of the ladies have given amazing summaries. And if you can tell a little bit, they're all passionate about what they do or what this system consists of and what they know how it should work. So we have some questions from some of the people in the audience. So I'm going to ask some of those questions. And please, if you're listening, this is an excellent opportunity. We have the triangular part of the courtroom represented. We have all of the players that you would encounter if you go into the criminal court system. This is your time to ask those hard-hitting questions. And we've gotten wonderful information so far, but this is it. So please give us your questions. We're here mostly to answer questions. I do want to do a little proviso as it relates to Judge Blackett. She is a sitting judge. So there are some things that she ethically cannot, she can't talk about an individual case. You know, my cousin's in front of you, you know, what are you going to do? None of those kind of cases. But if it comes to just how the procedure works and how it should work, those are the kind of questions she welcomes those questions, right, Judge Blackett?
Exactly.
And we will, wonderful, we want to answer those. So the first one I have is, how does one not feel like my lawyer and the DA are not working together and not for my benefit? Anyone can take that one.
I think Ms. Armstard is very familiar with that charge, because I hear it in the courtroom all the time that we're all working together to make sure that that person goes to jail, and it's not true. I will say one thing. I think some of the absolute best criminal defense lawyers are the public defenders, because they work with and they do what they do every day, day in and day out. And one of the things that really disgusts me is when people come in and they say that they want a real lawyer and they don't want a public defender.
That's true.
If I can on that one, I've got a real good example on that one. I had a client that I was representing on some pretty serious charges. And this has been probably about 10, 15 years ago. Went to see him as much as I could in the jail. Even on the weekends, I would get down there to talk about him, talk to him. And I could understand his anger. This man has basically proclaimed to the world he was innocent. And at every turn, he got an offer, and the offer became better and better and better. But he was innocent, and so he did not accept the offer. And I explained to him, you know, I'm required, in order to keep my license ethically, I have to tell you or convey to you whatever offer I get from the state. Because if it later comes out that there was an offer on the table and that your attorney did not tell you what that offer is, I can be facing charges, possibly lose my license or anything like that. But a lot of times, because I convey that offer to the clients, they feel, oh, so you're working with the state. No, I'm not working with the state. You need to listen to me. This is what the offer is. You have the right to decide whether or not you want to plead guilty or whether or not you want to take your case to trial. If you decide that you want to plead guilty and you get up on the bench, and if in the middle of that guilty plea to the judge, because the judge is going to also ask you, are you doing this freely and voluntarily? And it's being recorded in court. The attorney is sitting at the table, so they don't have any type of control over you or what you say. So you've got that opportunity to say, I'm doing it freely and voluntarily. But as I said, when I first started, I have an example. I had a young man, like I said, he'd been locked up for 3 years, some very serious, ugly charges. And for whatever reason, he fought me every time I went to see him. Right on the day of trial, and this is, I don't know if y'all familiar with Judge Bernie Wyman, but he's no longer on the bench. And he stood up to the judge and he told the judge, I don't think she's on my side. I think she's working with the state. I don't want her on my case.
Wow.
So Judge Wyman's response was, well, that's fine. If you've got an attorney to come right in and try this case today, then that's what we'll do. And Ms. Armstard does not have to try your case. Well, Judge, I don't. The judge said, no, he didn't want to hear anymore. That trial lasted a little over a week. And as I said, it was some very serious charges. And he was found not guilty on every single count of the case. The judge at the end, after the jury was dismissed, he said, now, did you still want Ms. Armstard relieved off of your case? But, and as I had mentioned earlier, I don't understand, if you've got somebody that's working on your behalf, why are you listening to other people whisper in your ear negative things about the public defender's office and saying all those public defenders are this or all those public defenders are that? If you were to actually look at the statistics on win-loss and looking at the nature of the cases that we have, you'll see that our win-loss record is pretty good there. And also, in light of the fact, public defenders cannot refuse to take a case. So no matter how ugly the charges might be, we have to take that case. And I've had people ask me, well, I've done murder cases, rape cases, any, child rape cases, anything you can imagine. And they would ask me, well, how can you work so hard on that case? And so I would explain to them in such a way that every person deserves their right to a fair trial. That's their right. And so it is my job to make sure they get a fair trial. And it is also my job to make sure the state crosses all those T's, dots all those I's. So if the client is found guilty, that case is not going to come back on appeal. That case is going to be over with. So I'm going to be checking that state on everything. I'm going to be asking them about, any statements, any investigations, will you let me do an open file discovery? Everything that I can think of, I'm going to hound that prosecutor.
So
some
pretty
prosecutors
much you can say, in summary, you do work for the benefit. So that's
we work for the benefit.
A misnomer. Okay, well, thank you so much. I got some more questions here, so let me move on a little bit.
Okay.
The next one is, why does it seem like the district attorney works for the police instead of the people? Muriel, that's probably a good one for you.
Of course. Well, it's, I don't know if you guys are into Law and Order, but I think they have, like, at the beginning of Law and Order where they say, the people are represented by two equal and distinctive, organizations. The police, as I stated earlier, the prosecutor is the chief law enforcement officer. So police and prosecution do work together. The police investigate, the prosecutors make the charging decisions and carry that charge throughout the case. It doesn't necessarily mean that police may not end up on the other side of the prosecutor. So the police, we could be working with them one year, and the next year they could be, we could be, looking to actually prosecute them. So we do work with them, but, it's just like citizens. one month a citizen could be accused of a crime, and then the next month they actually could be victims. So it kind of works the same way, but a righteous prosecutor should be able to distinguish and make determinations despite working closely with the police.
One thing I'd like to say also, and I'd like to commend you, Muriel, and the people that you work with, but you have to also understand that police are constantly out there in the street. They bring people back to the police station. They charge those individuals with what they have done with their preliminary investigations. When they turn the cases over to the prosecutors, at that time, that's when your law degree, which police don't have, and also you have more time to discern and to figure out what really happened in the case, whether the case is charged, overcharged, or undercharged. And so people need to understand there's a different review between what happens out there on the street as far as what the police do and when you actually get the case. There are many cases, and you should make sure people understand that even though they've been charged by the police after your investigation, the prosecutors often in other words, they dismiss the case because the case won't stand up in court. So they are not always working with the police, but they work with the police to a certain extent, but there is another level of review. So it's not like we're all in cahoots. Everybody has a role.
Good.
And Judge Blackett, we are held to a standard. It's unethical for me to participate in prosecution of a charge or a case that I feel I cannot. There's no probable cause, or that a jury is not going to convict. I'm not supposed.
And I think people need to know that.
Yeah, and I've actually had to, in my prior role, defend my decision to not prosecute, and it was a serious offense. But I believe that, this person not only was not guilty of what the crime he was accused. I didn't think that if I presented the case as the police gave me, that a jury would convict him. And so my law license comes before any type of role I have in the prosecutor's office or in any other business. So I had to, make a decision like, no, I have a law license first. Either y'all find someone else to prosecute the case, or, take the recommendation and the insight that I provided on this case. So that actually happens. And that's why I say diversity in the prosecutor's office, it's just, I cannot stress how important that is, because those are the type of decisions that prosecutors that look like me, we could be on either side, but we're also having to fight those type of issues, and we have to be represented on each side.
That's an excellent point. Ladies, we're actually getting a whole bunch of questions, so let me try to get through them. So
Kimkea, before you go any further, if I can make one comment on what she just said, on what they're just talking about,
Sure.
Real quick. And the quick thing is this: Muriel was a great prosecutor, but unfortunately, all of the prosecutors in that particular office do not have the high standards that she did. Mm-hmm. I've actually had a case that went to trial. In the middle of the trial, the judge called the prosecutor in and wanted to know why we were proceeding with this case. Mm-hmm. So everybody does not have that same high standard. And there are cases that go on in the system that should not be going on.
And that's a big one. And that's definitely something that I'm sure a lot of people out there believe as well. So thank you for that confirmation. And also thank you, Muriel, for talking about what should be an ethical obligation on the prosecutor's side to make sure that they charge. When I was a prosecutor, I was taught that we couldn't charge anything that could not be admitted with, admissible evidence. And that's the standard I always kept. But as you state, Donna and Judge and Muriel, that's not what's always in play. So let me get you some of these questions, because we got some good ones. Public safety would be improved if we could predict who is apt to be violent. isn't there a problem with having the courts get involved if someone hasn't already offended?
I'm not sure I understand that.
I'll be honest with you, it's kind of challenging to me too. I guess it boils down to basically why should every case go through the courts? I'm going to say that's it. Should every offense be a crime? You know,
Well, one of the things I'd like to say, it's not happening in all 50 states, but a number of states are beginning to have judicial restoration programs where people have been accused of crimes, and they have a panel of community activists, along with people from the court, along with people that are from the community, who will decide whether or not and what the punishment, if any, will be. And so every case, I think that people need to understand, every case does not necessarily belong in court. Every case does not necessarily end up in jail. And I think that's one of the things that you have a lot of people talking about criminal justice reform. People want to think that we're talking about letting murderers loose, things like that. That's not what we're talking about. But if you can find someone who has done something for the first time, is truly sorry for it, there may have been a reason for it. I don't know if some people saw the tape that was on TV several weeks ago with this little young child who had stole potato chips, and it took 3 police officers to put that child in the car for a bag of potato chips. I think that we can use our resources in a much, much better way than something like that. Because I think that in that situation, to be honest with you, that child just needed several adults to talk to him and say that was wrong.
And Kimkea, I think that's, you know, as Judge Blackett states, we're not going to be able to prosecute our way out of some of our issues in Memphis, in Shelby County. We're not going to be able to make enough jails to address what's going on with poverty, with a lot of the situations, and we're going to have to come up collectively with creative ideas about what is going on with the crime rate. It sounds great to say, you know, tough on crime, and I believe that in some instances that's how we should do, but we've not been successful trying to prosecute our way out of what is going on, especially with Black and brown people. And we need to have more conversations about what really is at the core of the crime, especially the juvenile crime. We need to start asking why it is, not just, okay, we have this problem, let's build prisons, let's build jails. Why is this happening?
Understood. I'm getting a lot of prosecutor questions, so I'm gonna try to collapse a few of them because I know time is running out on us. So what role does I think we kind of answered this, but we can give a snippet on it. What role does the prosecutor's charging decision play in the criminal legal system? And what should be the culture of a DA's office with respect to questions of innocence? Like a combination.
Well, I guess briefly, the prosecutor has the discretion about whether what gets filed in court and what does not. The police can arrest someone, but if ultimately it's up to the prosecutor whether or not that person faces criminal charges. I think that it's just important to remember that we have to have trust in our systems, in our prosecution, in our police departments. And those systems have to understand that it's just not enough to prosecute, but they have to go into those communities and they have to build trust. An issue that not always, but oftentimes I would have, people would call the police and then it would come up to criminal court, and they didn't want to talk to me. They didn't want to follow through with the charges. They were the victims of horrible crimes, but got to a point where they didn't trust either me or the system. And I understood it. And more attention needs to be paid as to why don't they want to show up to court? Why don't they trust you? You know, they're in harm's way and they just want the person to stop, or, you know, or they want to see some justice in that moment. But, you know, they have to, you know, once they're out of that unsafe situation, hey, we're vulnerable and we're going to create another problem if I help you. So we need to figure out why there's not, you know, trust with those systems.
That's a great answer. Here's a question for you, Donna. In regards to offers being made, is the same true for plea offers from the defense to the prosecutor? Victims are sometimes taken aback by some of the plea offers that the prosecutors bring to them and ask them to consider. So basically, want to know, does the defense attorney also bring up offers on how to settle the case?
You mean whether or not we might bring an offer to the state?
Yes.
If I look at a case and I know my client's history and his history is not that bad, I will go to the prosecutor and I'll say, look, you know, this kid has never been in trouble. You know, look at his grades, you know, look at everything else, you know, and see if we can maybe come to an understanding. So in that particular situation, yeah, I will go to the prosecutor on my client's behalf if I'm answering the question correctly.
I think you are. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Here's another one. Again, more of them are prosecutor based. How does the leadership in a DA's office impact the ability of the line attorneys to make decisions on individual cases? Do line prosecutors face repercussions if they try to dismiss a charge?
That is a compounded question.
It is. It's two questions.
You know, I think leaders set the tone of the culture in the office. It doesn't matter if it's prosecutor's office or the CEO of organization. I think the leader sets the tone of the culture. And, you know, the chief law enforcement officer has policies and procedures about dismissals and things like that. It's too much kind of for me to answer. It may be wise to dismiss a case, and it will depend on the charge, whether or not the prosecutors who are in the court have that discretion to dismiss things. Most times they do if it's minor cases. If you're talking about murder, rape, and things like that, there are several levels of review before things can get dismissed.
Muriel, I want to help you out a little bit, because there are times that the judge will step in, and going back to what Donna was saying, when you look at the individual, you look at the case, you look at the person's education, you look at whether or not they've had a lot of contact with the criminal defense system. There are a lot of times that the three of us, the prosecutor, the criminal defense attorney, and myself, will work together to see if we can find another solution. That's not to say it happens all the time, but going back with what I said earlier, you have to have people in place that are going to listen, be fair, follow the law, but also have some compassionate about the case, because each individual case that comes before us is different, and it turns on its own set of facts, regardless of what the law says. It depends on that. So to take a little bit of the heat off of you, sometimes the judge will be able to dismiss if the judge feels that there just isn't a case there at all. So I don't want you to feel like that you all are always on the firing line. The judge does retain that, but the role of the judge is more of a mediator, and rather than an advocate for either side.
Okay.
Can I also add on that one? And this is being a public defender for 30 years. some of the prosecutors in there, and I think this comes from the top, they get power hungry, and they will tell their junior prosecutors in certain divisions that they will not allow them to settle cases. And even cases that should have been settled, because that senior prosecutor in that division has decided to tell them that they've got to go to trial, they cannot settle the case. Also too, and this is probably before Muriel's time, when they instituted the no deals issue.
Still around.
Case would go up to indictment, and definitely looking at the case, it was something that really should not have been indicted. But because on top has decided, we want the public to see that we're against all crime, we're going to trial on something where this kid is looking at a whole bunch of time. But if you look at everything else that's involved, it shouldn't be. But you've got some prosecutors, like I said, who get power hungry, or either who might even have vendettas against certain attorneys that come into the courtroom. And also too, going back to juvenile court, we had issues with the prosecutor on some of the cases. If our young kids did not plead on certain cases, then they were told, well, your case is going to be transferred. Ooh. So when you start talking about power and you start talking about looking at the top down, that's the kind of system that we were dealing with.
Very great point. I have another question here. If we were talking with younger folks, what are 3 to 5 simple steps we can give them to follow when arrested and detained? I think you talked about it a little bit, Donna, but if you don't mind kind of answering that question.
If you're arrested, I'm going to tell you, a lot of these kids get stopped because no tail lights. Something is working wrong. I mean, just some of the silliest stuff. You get stopped, you be polite to the officer, you listen to what he has to say. But if they start asking you questions about, whether or not you did this or where were you at or whatever, you stop answering. And you get an attorney, and then you deal with it later on down the line. But you be respectful to the cop. Don't do the stuff out on the street, because you're going to be at the disadvantage.
Thank you so much. Well, ladies, we're actually wrapping up on our time. This was a wonderful discussion. The questions are just coming in, and I just know we're not going to have time to address all of them. So sounds like we're going to have a part 2, like Dr. Johnson talked about, because the information has just been phenomenal. So thank you again for participating, for everyone who listened and gave their questions. I'm going to pass this over to Dr. Johnson to summarize it, but thank you so much.
Well, listen, thank you, Kimkea, for this wonderful discussion. I want to thank Judge Blackett and attorneys Donna Armstard and Muriel, Malone, Nolen for being a part of this wonderful discussion. And please remember, if you are interested in sharing your thoughts about public safety with us, please, please, please reimagine PS, reimagineps@gmail.com. Send us that email, say, hey, I want to talk about public safety. We'll get back with you. We'll schedule up a time, because we are collecting information. We're interviewing people in Memphis and in Shelby County. We want to talk to you. We want you to share with us your thoughts about public safety. And until next time, next town hall. Yes, we're not through. The next town hall, stay tuned for it. We want to thank you for being a part of this. Thanking Elena Bloodworth as well, and all of the wonderful people at the Black Public Defenders Association for partnering with us to reimagine public safety in this community. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
We
would love to come back and continue we would love to come back and continue the conversation, because we need to educate our community on the criminal justice system. So at your request, anytime you want us to come back, we will.
All right.
Dr. Johnson. And I think I speak on behalf of everybody.
And I really appreciate the perspective from strong African-American women who are in these roles, because that representation, as everybody laid out in their presentation, it matters, because it does matter. So thank you, ladies.
Okay.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you.
Okay, thank you.
See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.